Yeah, listen, and that's a boneheaded mistake by me. They were calling one as well, and I'm off and down, but that was stupid.
There's a lot of narratives heading into this game between two division rivals in the AFC West. I cannot help but think that this rivalry was not supposed to go down like this, but here we are. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Last week I posted all of my picks onto my Instagram story at The Flight Mike, and a lot of you guys came up big as a result of it. I was 3 of 4 on Thursday Night Football, but when Sunday rolled around, we absolutely crushed it. I mean, I made $150 off of this slip, $400 off of this slip, and bro, this is probably the most heartbreaking of all. I would have made another $400 if Zach Wilson didn't get intercepted by Patrick Surtain II at the end of the Jets-Broncos game, because that pass was to Garrett Wilson, and they would have gotten more on their passing yards and receiving yards. I give away all my picks for free on my Instagram story. I usually announce them about an hour or two before the games, so make sure you have the notifications on Instagram. And if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, use my promo code Mikerophone, and they'll match up to $100 of your initial deposit when you first sign up. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Every time I think of two division rivals in the AFC West, I cannot help but think of the summer of 2022, where the Los Angeles Chargers traded for Khalil Mack and signed JC Jackson, who, by the way, they recently traded him back to the New England Patriots. The Las Vegas Raiders signed Chandler Jones, traded Yannick Ngakoue, and traded for Devontae Adams. And the Denver Broncos arguably went all in more than any other team, trading Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick in order to get Russell Wilson and a 2022 4th-round pick. And since then, it seems like the Denver Broncos are doing everything that they possibly can in order to make their investment in Russell Wilson pay off. And man, it seems like each and every year there's something new that goes wrong that sabotages this team. Last year, it was supposedly Nathaniel Hackett, and I will admit, Nathaniel Hackett didn't necessarily have the greatest game plan for Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos offense. I mean, come on, the entire Denver Broncos stadium needed to count down the play clock so they wouldn't get a delay of game penalty. That's really bad. But the bright side was that this Denver Broncos defense was suffocating. Enter this offseason, and the fix was simple. You get rid of Nathaniel Hackett, you trade a 1st-round pick this year and a 2nd-round pick next year for a 3rd-round pick and Sean Payton, and hopefully Sean Payton could fix Russell Wilson. But here's the thing, and although that was successful, kinda, and I guess you could say Russell Wilson has been fixed, the caveat of all this is that Sean Payton brought Vance Joseph along to be the Denver Broncos defensive coordinator. Now let's forget the fact that Vance Joseph is just a few seasons removed from being the Denver Broncos head coach, so I can imagine that in of itself being awkward, but bringing him back, despite him being a historically terrible defensive coordinator, was questionable to say the least. And the funny part of all this is, well, now the Denver Broncos defense sucks. So going into this matchup versus the Kansas City Chiefs, we found out multiple important pieces of information. One, the Denver Broncos are desperate for a win after choking a very easy win away versus the New York Jets and their former head coach, Nathaniel Hackett. That included questionable play calls and Russell Wilson choking the game away. But that aside, we found out the most important news of all. Ladies and gentlemen, Taylor Swift is gonna be at this game. Everybody don't panic, Taylor Swift is gonna be there.
Grab your girlfriends, grab your wives, grab your daughters, because Taylor Swift is gonna be at the game.
Now that we got the most important news out of the way, the Denver Broncos season is already in flux. We're talking about a team that has only won 1 game so far and has lost 4 of their games. This is a team that's already traded Randy Gregory and is on the cusp of trading Frank Clark. I mean, they're either going to trade Frank Clark or they're going to release him apparently. That's not it. It seems like on top of this, the Denver Broncos are expected to trade Jerry Jeudy prior to the trade deadline. One high-ranking NFC personnel director says that his team has already held internal discussions about a possible deal for Jeudy. You might be wondering who that team might be. Well, the rumored team in this particular instance is the Indianapolis Colts, supposedly. So we're only like a few weeks into the season, and this was supposed to be the year that the Denver Broncos put it together, and now the Denver Broncos are already discussing blowing it up once again. You remember last year during the trade deadline, they also traded multiple key pieces of their roster, including Bradley Chubb, which is how they were able to trade for Sean Payton, because they got the draft pick from the Bradley Chubb trade and rerouted it to New Orleans to get Sean Payton. So you can see things aren't necessarily going so well for Denver, and the worst part is it's not even Russell Wilson's fault directly this year. It seems to be other factors in play. So would they be able to turn it around against the Kansas City Chiefs? Well, let's see how this all goes down. The pregame was very spicy. I mean, Steve Smith would say this.
Actually, I called out to him because on my podcast, Cut to It, I just talked about guys that maybe have not showed up in a way or in a manner. And so the word that I've used to describe him in the past was a jag, just a guy. Just a guy. And so when I saw him, he's playing well. I wanted to say to him face to face, like, hey, I know I said some things in the past I probably shouldn't have, and I'm sorry. That's what I wanted to say to him. His response, Mike Robb and Bucky, was ninja. Ninja? Yes, I'm using the word ninja. I'm just using the word ninja. I don't mess with you. And it was a curse word.
Alongside things like no one should trade for Jerry Jeudy.
I'm sorry that I said you were a jag, just a guy who's an average wide receiver that you use a first round pick on that isn't doing anything. I hope today that you actually show up in a way that you haven't showed up in the last couple of years since they drafted you. So if you ever got a problem with Agent 89, I'm sorry for saying that you're an average wide receiver that they eventually will move on. And when teams call me and asking, should they trade for you? I will say no, don't trade for Jerry Jeudy.
And would really go in and I think just make a personal vendetta against Jerry Jeudy very apparent.
He's mentally unable to handle constructive criticism from people who watch specifically, can he be a wide receiver? He can be a wide receiver. He's a tier 3. Go back into the studio. I'm done now. Thank you.
And things would take a very interesting turn when Jerry Jeudy would pull up behind Steve Smith.
Decisive as he needs to be. He needs to go ahead and make the right decisions all the time. And so I got some tape to really show you if he can hit a wide receiver.
So Jerry Jeudy is quite literally dancing behind Steve Smith as this is going on. And you can tell that Steve Smith's partner at this point is very uncomfortable with what's going on, which resulted in Jerry Jeudy doing this.
You don't turn on without me. What they want to do, you don't turn on without me.
It's just really interesting because Steve Smith kind of hauled it out, I guess, saying that don't trade for Jerry Jeudy because he's mentally unable to handle criticism. And I guess Jerry Jeudy found out what Steve Smith said about him because, well, he acted the way he did. Just a truly bizarre situation to happen before a Thursday night football game. And to be honest, as a result, I didn't know whether to take higher than or lower than on Jerry Jeudy on Prize Picks, to be honest. So with that being said, you might be wondering what kind of game Jerry Jeudy would have. You might be thinking that this could be fuel for the Denver Broncos offense. You couldn't be more wrong. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a more anemic offense play in Denver Broncos history. I mean, well, no, save for last year. The very first half for Jerry Jeudy was 1 yard of receiving on 2 receptions. Russell Wilson clearly seems like he's doing whatever he possibly can to pad his stats, taking sacks on 3rd down, downs and fourth downs instead of chucking the ball up to try to preserve the drive. And it was very apparent throughout this entire game. The one statistic that'll blow your mind the most is the fact that Travis Kelce had more yards in the first half with 109 receiving yards than the Denver Broncos had as a team combined, 76 yards. But I'm not letting Sean Payton off the hook either. On the final drive of the first half, Russell Wilson would get sacked. For some reason, Sean Payton thought it'd be a good idea to call a timeout after Russell Wilson would get sacked. This gave Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs time to drive down the field and resulted in a Harrison Butker 60-yard field goal. It's like beautiful combination of ineptitude, and not even stat padding could save the Denver Broncos when you're on national TV. The storyline of the entire game was the fact that the Denver Broncos had no ability at all whatsoever to put together a successful offensive drive. They were able to finally do it, but by the time they did, there was about 6 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. And I don't want to take away anything from Courtland Sutton, because Courtland Sutton's reception was absolutely beautiful for the Denver Broncos' first touchdown of the game. The Broncos would convert the 2-point conversion, but at that point, when you're giving the ball back to Patrick Mahomes with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I mean, at that point, it's too little too late. I will admit, Patrick Mahomes, who is one of my favorite players, obviously, hasn't necessarily looked like himself this year. I don't know if it's the fact that Eric Bieniemy is gone. I don't know if it's the fact that he needs more wide receivers. I don't know if it's the fact that Matt Nagy is his new offensive coordinator. It could be anything. It definitely had nothing to do with the Denver Broncos defense, because they still allowed 300 plus yards passing to Patrick Mahomes. But you do have to admit, coming into this game, I expected the Chiefs to easily drop 30 on the NFL's worst ranked defense, and they didn't. So I guess you could say that the Denver Broncos defense did their job. But tonight, once again, and I know this is a narrative that's getting a little boring at this point, the Denver Broncos offense didn't do their job. Looks like this team is heading towards a huge full-scale rebuild that's going to include the departure of Frank Clark, Jerry Jeudy, and they're also going to have to figure out what to do with Russell Wilson. The good news is that the Denver Broncos were able to retain their 2024 first-round pick. If they continue to have a horrific season like they currently are having, then at the very minimum, if Caleb Williams falls into their laps at the number 1 overall pick, they could pull the trigger on it. Now, whether or not Caleb Williams would want to declare for the NFL draft and play for an inept franchise, which at least recently the Broncos look like an inept franchise, is a different conversation. But for now, what we could say is, once again, Russell Wilson was exposed on national TV. I mean, he looked terrible tonight. This is a man that's getting paid $49 million a year until his age 39 season. He is the 7th highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and his contract is a gigantic albatross on the Denver Broncos. I mean, yeah, I understand you went up against one of the top defenses tonight in the Kansas City Chiefs, but at this point, I think we could all agree Russell Wilson is not it. I mean, Russell Wilson went 13 of 22, threw for 95 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He got sacked 4 times and had a passer rating of 46.6. For those of you guys wondering, Jerry Jeudy, who was supposed to have some sort of revenge game because of what happened with Steve Smith, only had 3 receptions for 14 passing yards this game. And I don't want to let Sean Payton off the hook either. I mean, any head coach that's quite literally leaking his play call sheet for the entire world to see has to shoulder some of the blame as well, which good luck changing all the terminology next week, Sean. At least you have a mini bye to do so. But it seems like this Denver Broncos team has so many problems offensively in the form of Russell Wilson and the lack of cohesion and chemistry offensively. Defensively in the form of Vance Joseph somehow sabotaging one of the better defenses in the entire NFL. I'm not even sold on Sean Payton anymore. And of course, the Denver Broncos are 1-5. Once again, we have brand new individuals that are leading the way in the form of Sean Payton, at least, and Vance Joseph, yet we are achieving the same exact results. You would think that the Denver Broncos would have learned from trading high picks for formerly established individuals in football and hoping that they would somehow be able to resurrect this franchise that is just heading consistently towards mediocrity. But nope. It seems like it's the same story as last year. Last year with Russell Wilson, this year with Sean Payton. If you're a Denver Broncos fan, let me know in the comment section down below, what should the Broncos do at this point? How could they save their season? Should they just punt on the season and tank? I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.